Welcome to part 2 of Synagogues of Wisconsin. In this episode, we check out 5 cities that are a little closer to Lake Michigan. They are Appleton, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, Fon du Lac, and Oshkosh to see their active synagogues. And we also take a look at a 6th one, Stevens Point, for a closed Jewish house of worship. And we'll start with Appleton. This is Moses Montefiore Synagogue. It is an egalitarian, conservative, affiliated congregation. Rabbi Kenneth Katz is their spiritual leader. As he lives in Madison, he comes to the synagogue 2 weeks a month. When he is not with them, lay leaders conduct the services. There are Hebrew school classes on Sunday and one night a week depending on the age of the student. The congregation has been in existence since 1903. Because it is a conservative rather than an Orthodox congregation, they find it necessary to make the following declarations about conduct during the services. All men and boys are requested to keep their heads covered during worship in the synagogue. Only those who are Jewish should wear a tallis or prayer shawl. If you are given a Torah honor and are not Jewish, please politely decline. Photography in the synagogue is prohibited during the Sabbath or a Yom Tov holiday. And finally, please silence your mobile phone when a service is in progress. By the way, this building was constructed in 1969. At the turn of this past century, the Jewish population of Appleton was estimated at about 300 people. We're now going to turn our attention to another site of a Jewish house of worship in Appleton where the synagogue no longer is functioning. This was Temple Zion of Jerusalem. It was built in 1884 and existed as a synagogue building until 1932. 2 somewhat famous Jews were associated with this congregation. One was a rabbi here in the late 1890s, early 1900s. He happened to be the father of Harry Houdini, the famous magician. The other was Edna Ferber, who wrote a couple of books that became also famous movies, Giant and Showboat. We now turn our attention to Manitowoc. This is Congregation Anshe Po'alei Tzedek in Manitowoc. The name in English means People of Righteous Workers. They defined themselves as a traditional egalitarian congregation, which would put them to having affiliation with the conservative movement. The congregation was established in 1900. They do not have a regular rabbi, but have a cantor listed as their spiritual leader. The stone inscription reads that this building was dedicated in 1954. From 1925 until then, it was in this building. As is typical for that time period, the congregation started out as Orthodox and eventually shifted to the conservative affiliation. And now on to our next city, Sheboygan. This is Congregation Bethel of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Sheboygan is 50 miles north of Milwaukee and almost seems in today's world like a nearby suburb. The congregation has Saturday morning services followed by a luncheon, and once a month it also has Friday evening services for Shabbat. There are at least 60,000 residents living in Sheboygan, and at one time there were enough Jews to require the need of at least 3 synagogues, and they were all Orthodox. There was Adas Israel, also known as the White Shul, because of its white wooden exterior. Ahavas Shalom was known as the Brick Shul, and Ohel Moshe, also known as the Holman Shul. The Holmans happened to have been a very wealthy and influential family, and they helped finance this third synagogue. In 1944, this particular congregation, Beth El, was established as a conservative-affiliated synagogue. At its zenith, it had more than 150 families. Now it has approximately 50 households. There is no official rabbi. Lay leaders conduct the services. This building here was the White Shoal, or Adas Israel. It was built in 1910. Extensive changes were made to the front facade, but all the windows on the front and on the sides remained the same as they looked when it was a synagogue. And now on to our next city, Fon du Lac. This is Temple Beth Israel, affiliated with the conservative movement. This building was erected in 1960. The building is rarely used. Services are rarely convened due to the shrinking Jewish population in Fon du Lac. And now on to our next town, Oshkosh, by gosh. This is Congregation B'nai Israel with Reform affiliation. More than 65 families are associated with this synagogue. Services are held at least twice monthly between September and May. During this time period, there is also Sunday school 3 times a month. B'nai Israel became a congregation in 1895 with just about 15 families as members. It moved into this building in 1948 and changed from Orthodox to the current Reform affiliation. And now let's head on to Stevens Point to see a synagogue that is no longer in use. This was Beth Israel Synagogue. The building was built in 1905 and it disbanded as a congregation in 1986. It was affiliated with the conservative movement. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. The building was deeded over to the Portage County Historical Society and is used as a museum to showcase to visitors what was once a vibrant Jewish community. Between the 1930s and 50s, there were 20 to 30 Jewish businesses in the downtown district. And so ends this episode of Synagogues of Wisconsin. There's more to come. Bye for now, and see you real soon.